So, and record and share. So we're going to uh okay, lights. Just before I give you the group assignment, I want to give you the background. Okay. And we're going to get our feet wet in terms of analyzing the impact of free trade agreements. What's the impact of free trade agreements? Uh, remember we talked about comparative advantage that determines the trade pattern. Now, in this section, moving forward, we want to, after predicting the trade pattern, we want to talk about what happens next. Why does it matter? And so that's the analyzing the impact of free trade agreements here. Let's get into it. So the way we're going to work on this is very simple. Okay. We have enough background. I think that the hard part is done in terms of complex thinking. Hard part is done, which is to understand the concept of comparative advantage leading to trade pattern, right? So the steps that we're going to take is going to be first, predict trade pattern using comparative advantage. And then once we have that prediction, right, which country is going to export which good, we can then think about what happens to the industries involved. Right? Export industries are going to expand, right? Especially industries with competitive advantage. And then import competing industries are going to contract, right? So that link is direct. So make hopefully it's automatic for you to think like that. Like you have trade pattern links directly to industry expansion and contraction, right? Once we have uh, that summary, which industry expands, which industry contracts, we then assess the impact on people involved in those industries, in particular, domestic resource owners, right? Industries are all about resource employment. And that's all it is. Production is all about resource employment. So when industries expand and contract, it's going to have an impact on the owners of these resources. And in economics, there are several types of resources that we group into land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability, right? So we have the four main types of resources. But in terms of business, right, they only think about two things. I think people and material, right? People and things. So we're going to think about it like that as well. Labor are resource owners, and they own labor. And then specific capital owners. This is going to refer not only to machines, but I want to refer also to land. You know, anything that you use as part of your production, I'm going to call that capital. Land is also a capital. Let's keep it simple like that. But don't get confused. It's still the same concept. Okay. Those who are in the expanding industries are going to benefit, right? Labor is going to have more demand for their work. Capital owners are going to have higher returns on their investment. But for contracting industries, the opposite is going to happen. There's going to be less demand for the workers in those sectors. And then there's also going to be less demand for the capital used in those sectors, which lowers their rate of return. Okay. Finally, we are going to look at the goods market as well, right? When trade happens, we have import coming into the country and we have export going out of the country. That's going to change the amount of products that are available for the domestic economy, right? And of course, that supply of goods is going to impact the price of the goods, which means that some goods are going to become more expensive, some goods are going to become less expensive. And the impact on consumers is going to depend on how that impact their cost of living. right? If the price changes, increase their cost of living, then they're hurt. But if the price changes, lead to a decrease in cost of living, that's going to benefit the consumers, right? And the cost of living can change based on the price changes, depend on the what we call consumption basket weights. Remember, we talk about consumers as having a basket of consumption, right? When you compute the consumer price index, and that's the cost of living index, we have this made up basket of goods, right? And the weights of uh, items determine how much the cost of living is sensitive, right? Determines how sensitive the cost of living is to that price. Okay. So we're going to look at it that way as well. Okay. So ultimately, the impact is going to be two prongs. First, impact on resource owners, and then impact on consumers. Those are the impacts. But the mechanism leading up to it comes from comparative advantage and industry expansion and contraction. Okay. Next, predicting trade pattern using comparative advantage. Okay. Now we know that once we know comparative advantage, we know the trade pattern, right? Comparative advantage refers to having a lower opportunity cost. So determining comparative advantage is the same as determining the opportunity cost. Okay. Which country has the lower opportunity cost is the country that has comparative advantage. So this is what we know so far, right? If country A has low cost of textiles, country B low cost in machinery, country A is going to export textile while country B exports machinery. The trick is to think about how the comparative advantage comes about. I'm going to give you a hint for this exercise, right? But we'll put the pieces together. That I think the thinking through the pieces, we will learn that as well. But I want you to see the whole picture first, how you, the kind of information you need and what you would do with that information. Okay. So determining opportunity cost will determine the trade pattern. All right. Second step, you're going to then, once we have the trade pattern concluded, once the trade pattern is determined, we know which industry is going to expand, which one's going to contract. The export industry is going to expand, and the import competing industries is going to contract. In our example just now with countries A and B, A exports textile, B exports machinery. In country B, machinery is going to expand, and then textile is going to contract. Right? That's in country B. Now that's the starting point, right? How do we assess the impact on the economy? This industry expand, this industry contract. There's gains and losses, right? So the next thing we're going to do is to think about the impact on resource owners. Right? Think about each industry employing workers, employing capital, right? Some workers are mobile across industries. Some workers have specific skills and that they cannot move across industries. Same thing with capital. Some capital can be moved like money, right? Funding or managerial, whatever. It can be moved to other industries. But there are also specific capitals, like specific machine to make this product or specific land soil type to plant this crop. So resource owners that are mobile are not going to be impacted that much. They're just going to be moving from place to place. But for specific resources, like specific labor, if you're a textile maker, right, and the textile industry shrinks, you're going to suffer job loss, lower wages, right? But those guys who have specific labor in machinery in the expanding industry, soon then get higher wage. Same thing with capital, right? If your capital is funding, it's just money. You can move it anywhere, right? So it's not going to change that much. But if you're a specific capital owner, you know, the industry that if your industry expands, you're going to have increased returns on your capital. But if your industry contracts, right, and your capital cannot be used anywhere else, you decrease, your return is going to fall, and you're going to have lower returns on your investment. Okay, so that's the thing you gotta remember. And you have mobile factors and specific factors. Mobile factors, the impact is unclear, right? It depends on the total change in the GDP. But the specific factors, the impact is clear. If you're in the expanding industry, you're going to benefit. But if you're in the declining industry, you're going to lose. Okay. Resource owners. And then I want to talk about the impact on consumers next. And this is something quite well known on the benefit side, but on the cost side is rarely talked about. Right? So here's how consumers are affected. Okay. Of course, the prices are going to affect consumers and producers, right? So price goes up, that's good for producers, bad for consumers. Price goes down, good for consumers, bad for producers, right? So the key thing that links, the impact on producers and consumers is going to be the price. So let's talk about it. Okay. Now, prices, are determined by supply and demand, right? Supply constant, changes in demand is going to affect the price by increased demand. And if the supply is constant, right? Increased demand raises the price, decreased demand lowers the price, right? Now, the way to think about the impact of trade on prices is to think about domestic supply, at the moment as being fixed. So supply is fixed. When the country opens for trade, it's going to affect domestic demand for the product. How? If the country has comparative advantage, that product is going to be relatively cheap in the world market. When the country opens for trade, foreigners are going to demand that product. Now, let's say Thailand, right? We have durian. Can't buy it anywhere. If you're going to grow it somewhere, it's going to be expensive. So once we open up for trade, there's going to be higher demand for durian, raising the price, right? So if in the industry that has comparative advantage, opening up for trade is going to increase the demand for for the product, and the price is going to go up, right? We have foreign consumers competing for the same product as well, right? On the other hand, so this is something you're going to have to remember, okay? Because I didn't write it on the slide because I think it's from Econ 101, but I want you to be reminded that this is going to be what's used in your analysis. Yeah. Now, for an industry that doesn't have comparative advantage, when you open up for trade, the demand for your product is going to be taken by foreign competition. And you make some toothpaste, for example, all of a sudden you have Chinese toothpaste coming in, cheaper, better, I don't know. The demand for your toothpaste is going to fall. That leads to lower prices, right? So in export industries, the price is going to rise domestically. And in import industries, the price is going to fall. Okay. Now you have to link that to how consumers are affected and how producers are affected. Producers is clear, right? Expanding industry, you have higher price, more demand for your product, all that great stuff. Okay. So what that means is that when the country opens up for trade, the export sector experiences increased demand from foreigners, so domestic price increases. Then, and I summarize for you here, bad for consumers, good for producers. Oh, I guess I did summarize for you. Never mind, there it is. In the import competing sector, the demand is going to fall because there's now foreign competition. So domestic price decreases. This is good for consumers, bad for producers, right? So now we have all the tools ready to do our analysis. What's the impact on our consumers? Oh, by the way, these slides here are posted in Google Classroom, analyzing the impact of free trade. So you can look at that later on. And if I finish this recording early, I'll put it up as well. The impact on consumers. Prices are going to change, right? So the impact of free trade is going to work through prices and then leading to cost of living, right? So let's look at the impact on prices first. We saw before export prices go up, import prices go down, right? So reduce price for imported goods, increase price for exported goods, right? Exported goods is going to be price increases, right? Typically. Uh, then, okay, cost of living. Higher cost of living is bad and lower cost is good. Let's keep it simple like that, right? Remember, higher cost of living, that's your budget, and you have your fixed budget. So if the cost of living is higher, then your utility does. Anyway, impact on cost of living depends on the consumer basket, right? Remember, let's pretend let's assume that let's suppose that in your consumer basket you have apples and you have oranges, right? Let's annotate that really quick here. You have apples and you have oranges, right? Let's have two goods, let's say, right? And let's say apples is 70% of your consumption, of your budget, and oranges is 30%, right? Simple math is like this. If the price of apples go up 1 unit, right? Price of apples go up 1 unit, it's going to impact your cost by only 0.7. And each dollar it goes up, the cost goes up only 0.7. And whereas for oranges, each dollar that goes up, the cost of living goes up 0.3. As simple as that. Right? So uh, if the product, right, has a huge weight in your consumer basket, then its price changes is going to impact the cost of living more, right? Suppose suppose both products, right, experience price changes, and the price changes are the same amount, right? Let me check your understanding here. Okay. Uh, for this question, can you make a guess without doing any computation? You can do computation if you want. Okay? If this happens, price apples go down 10%, while price of oranges go up 10%. What's the impact on the cost of living? Is it going to increase, decrease, or unknown? Let's do that. Increase, decrease, or unknown? And participate really quick. Just type in like cost of living. Right? So answer that. Okay, never mind. Let's go. Okay. What's your guess? What's your guess? Was the learn up, down, or unclear? Okay. Unknown. Try to do some math here. Orange is only 30% of your cost. Okay. Uh, yeah. So I think, you know, intuitively, few people seem to uh grasp, right? That um you have this item, right? That is a huge chunk of your spending, right? The price change of that item is going to impact your cost of living more. Right? In this case, apples take up 70% of your budget. Right? Any price change uh, that happens to apples is going to affect you a lot. Right? Whereas oranges, only 30% of your basket, you know, it's a small part of your consumption. So the price change in that product is going to be less impactful on your cost of living. So in this case, right, it's going to be that this change here is going to lower your cost of living. And we can try to do some math, but maybe you can try to do that on your own time. But I just wanted to give you this quick intuition. Okay. And yeah, so, in this case, if trade pattern leads to orange export and apple import, okay, and causing the price of apples to go down 10% and price of orange to go up 10%. In this case, consumers are going to benefit. And in this particular case, consumers are going to benefit because the cost of living is lower. Despite the fact that oranges are more expensive, the cost of living is lower, right? So let's go to the next slide. I think that's all we have. Okay, so yeah, let's recap. Let's recap. I think I didn't do a recap slide here. Clear annotation. How do you clear annotation? Recap. Uh, Here's how you analyze the impact of free trade. And predict trade pattern, determine the industry dynamics, expansion or contraction, impact on resource owners, right? And then consumer impact. So what this means is that you need information to predict comparative advantage. You need some information. Which country would have comparative advantage? And once you have that, step two comes automatically. Right? Once you know step three, you need to know about the resource use intensity in different industries, right? In the expanding industry, which resource is used intensively? Which resource is used less? So we need to know that. We need to know the production technology, right? To analyze step three. Who's going to be impacted? Who's going to be impacted and how much, right? And then finally, to evaluate consumer impacts, you need information on consumer basket. Which good do consumers consume more? Okay, so that's all for this uh, intro lecture. I'm going to go ahead and